Hello everyone, this is Luke from Expat Aviator, and today I'm back with another S3 tutorial for you. This time we're going to be looking at the basic phraseology you're going to need to be a radar controller. As always, this is designed for people who are training or waiting to train for their S3 in VAT UK. And this video, it probably won't actually apply to a lot of people who are outside the UK because the RT is taken from Cap 413 from the CAA. Which is basically only applicable to the UK, but some aspects will be similar. And of course, a disclaimer, as always, we're not endorsed by VAT UK, so there may be some mistakes in the video. If you do spot any mistakes or you have any questions, just let us know in the comments. So in today's video, we're going to look at the RT for first contact. We're then going to split the instructions into vertical instructions, horizontal instructions, and then speed instructions. We'll then look at the RT associated with ILS approaches. We'll then look at a rather strange one, but it's good to know, TCAS and GPWS RT. We'll then look at handovers, and then finally just some small general points for you. So starting off with first contact. On first contact with the radar controller, a pilot must report their aircraft type, including the variant. It is important that you do clarify the variant with the pilot. So even if they just say, yeah, we're a 777, you need to get the variant. They also need to report the ATIS information and their cleared level, just to prevent level busts. So a typical call back to the pilot would be something along the lines of Speedboat 123 Manchester radar, information Bravo, vectoring for an ILS approach runway 23 right, report your aircraft type and cleared level. Basically what we're looking for is the pilot has to report their aircraft type and cleared level. Okay, so if they don't report that, we need to ask them for it. So, i.e. the last bit of that phraseology there, report aircraft type and cleared level, or report cleared level, or just report aircraft type. The ATIS information, we include where it says information Bravo if the pilot doesn't include it, but if the pilot does, then we just omit it completely. So, if a pilot didn't report any information, you would say everything that's in that bit of RT. If they reported all the information, you would take out the bits in kind of normal brackets. The bits in curly brackets, the ILS and 23 right, are just bits of information you could change. So you could say vectoring for a visual approach runway 23 left, for example. Now, you can add extra RT, and we're going to get back to this later on, as to kind of how much you should add. But another example call, now this would be assuming that the pilot reported everything they needed to. You could say, Speedboat 123 Manchester radar, vectoring for an ILS approach runway 23 right, descend flight level 70, leave Dane heading 030 degrees. That would be acceptable. So you can add more to it, hence the reason there are the dots in that middle bit of RT on the screen. So that's first contact. Let's move on to vertical instructions. So if an aircraft is climbing or descending to a flight level, you'd say Speedboat 123, descend or climb flight level 120. If they're descending to an altitude or a height, or climbing, it will be Speedboat 123, descend or climb to altitude or height 3,000 feet. The key difference between the two there is that if it's to an altitude or a height, the word to needs to be included. If it's to a flight level, you don't include the word. So Speedboat 123, climb flight level 120. Speedboat 123, climb to altitude 3,000 feet. It's a key difference that you need to get. If you mix that up, you'll notice that a lot of pilots will read back incorrectly. The QNH and the QNFE, whichever's applicable at the time, should be given on first descent to an altitude or height. So let's just say you get an aircraft handed over to you at flight level 70. Whenever you're going to first descend them to an altitude, that is when you would include the QNH. So for example, Speedboat 123, descend to altitude 4,000 feet, QNH 1002. Any descents after that, you don't include the pressure setting unless it's changed. Finally, you will hear this little bit of RT. Speedboat 123, climb flight level 120, but you'll also hear Speedboat 123, climb now flight level 120. There is a difference between the two. Cap 413 for the UK doesn't actually have the climb now in it, as far as I'm aware. But what we've done is we've adopted that from ICAO phraseology. This is where it all gets a bit fun. Basically, we use climb now to either tell the pilot to do it right away or to cancel a vertical profile. So if an aircraft takes off on a SID, what they should actually do is maintain the SID altitude till the end of the SID and then climb with whatever instruction they're given. So if you say Speedbird 123 climb flight level 120, technically the pilot should fly the SID, stay at the SID altitude, and then only at the end of the SID climb to flight level 120. If you say climb now flight level 120, they're cancelling their vertical profile, so they're ignoring the SID's vertical profile and climbing straight away to 120. So that's the difference. So we use climb now on the first climb. So when you're climbing them above the SID, we use climb now. Any climb after that, we just say climb flight level 120. So looking at horizontal instructions, for turns, just the most basic turn, Speedbird 123, turn left or right, heading 120 degrees. We only include the word degrees when the heading ends in a 0. So you may hear some controllers say Speedbird 123, turn right, heading 035. That's correct. 035 degrees is incorrect. But you can't say turn right heading 120. That does need a degrees on the end of it. So if it ends in a 0, you include degrees. If it doesn't end in a 0, you don't say degrees. It's a good idea to repeat the word left or right if you're turning the aircraft the wrong way. So let's just imagine the aircraft's flying north, so they're heading to 360 degrees. Imagine you want to turn them heading 050 degrees. Now, the quickest way, obviously, is to make a right turn. But let's say, for whatever reason, you wanted the pilot to make a left turn, so to make a really long turn, and then roll out 050. It's always good if you're going to make them turn like the wrong way, or the long way round, to include the word again. So, for example, Speedbird 123, turn left, heading to, say, 050 degrees, whatever heading you want. But if they're going to go the long way round, say left or right twice. You may hear some people say Speedbird 123, turn left the long way round, heading 050 degrees. That's also acceptable. Just from personal experience, I found that pilots tend to not understand that one as well. But there's nothing in Cat 413 actually written down for that, so it's up to you. Another example of a turn would be Speedbird 123, leave Dane, heading 120 degrees, so you can tell the pilot to fly a heading after a fix. And you do it by saying leave Dane, heading 120 degrees. You can also instruct a pilot to just fly heading 120 degrees, and if you've watched our video on holding, you'll have already seen that RT. You can say that wherever you like, it doesn't have to be in a hold. But what you've got to be careful with is that pilots will take the they should take the shortest route. Not all VATSIM pilots will, but they should take the shortest route. Now, the problem is that leaves a bit of ambiguity as to what the pilot will do. In other words, you haven't entirely got control of what that pilot's going to do. So it's not. We tend to say it's not recommended to say fly heading, but you can use it. But yeah, the most standard one is just turn left or turn right heading, whatever. In terms of navigation, when a pilot's already on their own navigation, and then you want to route them to a fix further on than what the next one is, you would say Speedbird 123 route direct Dane. However, if they're on a heading and you're sending them back to a waypoint, you'd say Speedbird 123 resume own navigation direct Dane. There's a subtle difference there, but you do need to make sure you grasp that one. So moving on to speed instructions. We have two types of speeds. We have hard speeds and soft speeds. So hard speeds are where we instruct the pilot to fly one value, one speed, and that's it. So Speedbird 123, speed 220 knots. A soft speed is when we give the pilot some flexibility. So, for example, Speedbird 123, speed 220 knots or greater. Or Speedbird 123, speed 180 knots or less. That would be a soft speed. Other kind of bits of phraseology you'll need to do with speeds. Speedbird 123, no ATC speed restriction. What that phrase does is obviously it cancels any speed restriction the aircraft has, but it also tells the pilot that they can fly faster than 250 knots if they wish to. Okay, and we're going to look at speed limit points in another video. But when you know what a speed limit point is, the use of no ATC speed restriction will effectively cancel that speed limit point. Another phrase for speeds isn't actually on the slide, but you may want to use it, you probably will quite a lot, is telling the pilot to maintain a speed until a specific point. So the most common example we have of that is when we tell pilots, speedbird 123, speed 160 knots until 4 DME. So in other words, maintain 160 knots till 4 miles, and after that, do what you want. Again, not on the slide, but that's a useful one for you. Just some notes on speed instructions. We don't ever include words such as reduce, maintain, or increase. Okay, so a lot of people, when they get onto radar, just seem to, for whatever reason, say increase speed 220 knots, reduce speed 210 knots, maintain speed 250 knots. We don't use any of those words. Makes it more complicated for you because you have to work out whether it's an increase, a decrease, or a maintain. And it's just extra RT we don't need. So it's always speedbird 123, speed, whatever. Okay, no word before it. So let's look at the ILS RT. Now, we will do another video. You can go and find it on approach types, where we'll look at the RT for each individual approach type. But I'm just going to focus on the ILS in this video, just because it is the one we tend to use kind of nearly all the time. So, if the pilot is cleared to the platform altitude or below, you'd say speedbird 123 cleared ILS approach runway 23 right. If the pilot's cleared to anything above the platform altitude, you say speedbird 123, when established on the localizer, runway 23 right, descend on the glide path. It is important you get that one word for word. We get a lot of people saying descend with the glide path. The glide path doesn't go into the cockpit and descend with you. You descend on the glide path, not with it. Equally, you get people saying once established. Very small picky bits, but that one you need to get nailed down word for word. I have put a star and a little note there at the bottom. Technically, you can use the second bit of phraseology regardless of the cleared altitude or flight level, but due to the length of it, we teach it as I've just explained above. So, if the pilot is cleared to the platform altitude or below, it's the top bit of RT. If they're cleared to anything above the platform altitude, it's the other bit of RT. And just as a final note on this, it is the cleared altitude or flight level we're looking at. It's nothing to do with the current altitude or flight level the aircraft's at. It's only what they cleared to. So if someone's at flight level 360, you'd cleared them to the platform altitude, you would say cleared ILS approach. It doesn't matter where they are now, it's only where they cleared to. So let's look at handovers. The most basic one, which you should know by now, is speedbird 123, contact whatever station and then the frequency. Just to reiterate from kind of S2 notes and S1 notes, make sure you say the full call sign of the station, so not just radar, contact Manchester radar. And then obviously the rest of it, you should really know that RT by now. To be able to use that bit of RT, this is the bit that will be new for you. So to use that RT, the aircraft either has to be identified by the other controller, or you have to transfer the identity, which will be via a radar handover, which is in our releases video, or the details have to be passed. Basically, you have to meet one of those conditions to use contact whoever. If you can't meet those conditions, or you don't want to, the other way to hand someone over is to say speedbird 123, 3 call Manchester radar, 118.575. So by saying 3 call, what you're effectively saying to the pilot is, look, the controller you're about to go to doesn't know about you. I'm just telling you that that's the next frequency you need to be on. So you need to call him straight away, but he won't know your details. So you need to call him up with the full-blown message. To send someone over free call, they have to be squawking 7000. Don't worry too much about what details they're actually meant to report, because we will look at that in another video, which will be in FIS and VFR. But to free call, you don't pass the details, the aircraft has to be squawking 7000. As a general rule of thumb, we use contact for pretty much every IFR aircraft, and free call tends to be for VFR aircraft, but that isn't a hard rule, it's just a rule of thumb. Some other kind of more complicated handoff bits of RT. Speedbird 123 report heading to Manchester radar, or report speed to Manchester radar. If an aircraft is transferred under something that's been coordinated, but it isn't a standard procedure, we tell them to report the bit that's not non-standard. So an example of this would be if the area controller came to you as the radar controller and said, look, I need to give you this guy heading 330 degrees, is that okay? You say, yeah, that's fine. So you've coordinated it. The area controller will tell the pilot to report their heading to you, just to reiterate that they are on a heading, because it's non-standard. So that's another bit of RT. We tend not to use it so much for radar, but you need to see it from the other aspect of the area controller. And then finally, general notes. The only kind of real thing I'm going to talk about here is the limit on readback items. So it's a common misconception that we're not allowed to include more than 3 readback items in a transmission. That's wrong. 3 is a recommendation and not a maximum. Ultimately, it depends on the stage of flight. If the pilot's expecting a lot of information, then you can give them more than 3 readback items. But if they're not expecting a lot of information, don't go and give them a massive long transmission, because the chances are they're not going to be able to accept it. So I've put a dotted line across the screen, and so above the line is like a good transmission. At those 2 points there, on initial contact and leaving the fix, the pilot is expecting a lot of information. So you could probably include more than 3 readback items, as I've done there. So Speedboat 123, Manchester radar, information Bravo, vectoring for an ILS approach, runway 23 right, descend flight level 70, leave lane heading 030 degrees. It's long, and that's on the limit of what I would say is bordering on too long, but because the pilot is expecting a lot of information, you can include it. The pilot's response would be leave lane heading 030 degrees, there's 1 readback item, descend flight level 70, 2 readback items, vectoring for an ILS approach, runway 23 right, 3 readback items. So that's fine, that's okay. But now a bad example would be if the aircraft's in your RMA and you say to them, Speedboat 123, turn left heading 020 degrees, descend to altitude 2,000 feet, QNH 1012, 25 track miles. It will be vectoring for an ILS approach runway 23 right and speed 220 knots. You imagine you're the pilot. You're just expecting maybe 2 instructions there and you get that. That's a lot to read back, and the pilot's probably going to miss it. So that's just kind of like that should help you with how much to put in transmissions, but ultimately it's a feel thing. I hope this video has helped you. It's probably got quite long, but these are the most basic bits of RT you need. As I said, we will be focusing on other bits of RT, so VFR, phraseology will be in the VFR video, approach types will be in the approach types video. But yeah, if you do have any questions in the meantime, let us know, and I'll see you soon.